In Chicago, Dr. Martin Steiner and his team of scientists are experimenting with a large particle collider machine when it suddenly goes into a meltdown. This causes a deadly explosion, resulting in widespread devastation. Hundreds and thousands of people are instantly killed, while millions of others are injured. Following this incident, Chicago is closed off from the outside and designated as a no-go zone. But then weird ghosts start appearing here and there, known as remnants. They are the projections of the explosion victims. Even though they seem to be exactly like their true form, they pose no threat to living things because they are unable to change reality. The remnants' acts are repeated in a loop and barely endure a few seconds. This implies that a remnant who rides a bicycle now will continue to do so tomorrow. The movie then cuts to 10 years later, and we are taken to a town just outside Chicago. Even here, many people were killed by the explosion and their remnants are appearing on a daily basis. We are then introduced to Veronica Calder, a 17-year-old girl who lives with her mom, Anna. Her father, who was among the fatalities on that dreadful day, now appears for breakfast every morning in his remnant form. August Bittner, the physics teacher at the school, is making a speech regarding the remnants. Veronica wonders inquisitively as to why deceased individuals from alternate universes are suddenly becoming remnants. She gestures to a girl who is obviously dressed in 1980s fashion to serve as an example, but Bitter is at a loss on how to respond to this. Veronica is staring at Kirk, an aloof person who is preoccupied with the remnants, at lunch. He allegedly got expelled from his prior school, although no one is aware of why. That evening, while Veronica is taking a shower, she is startled to see an unfamiliar remnant appear out of nowhere. Then, a rather unsettling event occurs. Due to the fact that they are merely projections, it should be impossible for the enigmatic remnant to write the word "run" on the mirror. The next day, Veronica approaches Bittner in fear and requests a private conversation. He accepts and extends an invitation for her to see him. When they arrive, they see Ava, his daughter, but she appears aloof and turns to leave. The occurrence from the other night, which has left Veronica quite uneasy, is then explained by Veronica. Bittner asserts that it is not feasible, citing the remnant's inability to have an impact on reality. He surmises that she must be experiencing hallucinations as a result of the fall. Because Kirk is knowledgeable about the entities, Veronica later chooses to ask him for assistance. She goes with him to a cave that is home to hundreds of fish remnants swimming in it. Kirk adds that this tunnel typically floods during the rainy season and is home to a variety of aquatic creatures. He visits this location every day to watch the fish leftovers, which appear to be multiplying. This implies that those creatures are also being transformed from the recently deceased fish. Once out of the tunnel, Veronica gets straight to the point and asks for his help in identifying the mysterious remnant from her bathroom. Kirk initially says he's busy and declines, but after she offers to finish his homework, he gives in. Later on at school, while they are discussing potential solutions, Veronica unintentionally refers to the remnant as Brian. She can't answer when asked how she knew that name. Kirk continues by saying that they must take a photo of Brian before they can begin the research. Ordinary cameras cannot accomplish that. Hence, they require a spectrographic lens. The issue is that these are extremely expensive. Luckily, Veronica knows someone who can improvise a spectrographic lens with common household items. After installing the camera in the restroom, the two watch for Brian to show up. He eventually appears, and it seems that the lens is having an impact on him. Then he lunges toward Veronica, but just as he does, the lens breaks, making him vanish. Kirk got a picture of him even though it was a heated interaction. After that, he looks into it and finds out about Brian's terrible past. The following day at school, Kirk reveals to Veronica that Brian was a serial killer who abducted and murdered a local girl named Mary. To find more information, they then visit Mary's mother. The latter says that Brian stalked his daughter for weeks and eventually persuaded her to come with him. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. She was found dead later that night, while Brian committed the unthinkable the next day. In the next scene, we see Veronica and Kirk researching in the school library. After putting together all the clues, they discover that Mary was killed on her birthday. It was the 29th of February, also known as the leap year. Since Veronica and the incident both share the same birthday, she wonders if the occurrences are connected. The two are conversing when a shadowy creature emerges from behind them. The lights then begin to flicker, and Veronica lets go of her book. Upon picking it up, she discovers that the word "run" has been written multiple times. The principal calls Kirk into the school office the next day and asks him why he went to see Mary's mother. Although he claims it was for an assignment, the principal doesn't buy it. Veronica is spotted during a basketball game somewhere else. She makes frantic attempts to get in touch with Kirk, but he doesn't answer. At the same time, we witness the principal, having received a text from someone, making his way upstairs. At the basketball court, Veronica begins to see the enigmatic Brian in several places. When Veronica notices that he's standing on the opposite side of the court, she gets up from her chair to try to get to him. She is meddling in her play without even realizing it. Something startling occurs as soon as she eventually gets her act together. The principal abruptly collapses through the roof, terrifying everyone. Kirk tells Veronica that he had presented his full theory to the principal when he later pays her a visit at her home. He believes it was the reason the poor man was killed, but according to Veronica, it was merely an accident. Kirk says that he began studying the remnants since he was unable to say goodbye to his father while they carry on their conversation. The explosion caused the latter to die unexpectedly, and his remnant has never materialized. Kirk therefore intends to get in touch with his father and find out more about the phenomenon in the future. That night, Veronica experiences an unsettling nightmare where she sees Brian trying to grab her. She also experiences falling into an icy lake, where two female ghosts are casually swimming. When she wakes up, Anna enters her room and mentions that she will be traveling to another city for a job interview. She will only be able to return in 3 days. This makes Veronica sad as her mom is going to miss her birthday. Later, as the remnant dad is sitting in his usual breakfast position, Kirk notices something strange. He sees that the man is holding a newspaper which was published 3 years after the explosion took place. The main headline is about the disappearance and murder of two girls, Emma and Claire. Kirk quickly notes down the details and begins researching them. He soon learns that they also had their birthdays on the 29th of February and were killed on the same day. In the next scene, the duo meets an acquaintance who reveals that Brian and Claire were in a relationship. In actuality, Claire passed away in the same lab where the explosion started. Because of how horrific her death was, a lot of people visit the lab to see her remnant recreate the scene. Veronica and Kirk are confused at hearing this and wonder what Claire and Brian were up to in the lab. They choose to travel to Chicago in order to gather additional information. When they arrive in the abandoned city that evening, the remnants have taken control of it. The entities here have a massive population and exist for hours at a time. This could be because Chicago is the starting point, and whatever that is bringing the remnants has more clout here. Disregarding this, the two proceed to the lab, where a number of people are observing Claire's remnant in operation. The woman climbs a series of ladders, seemingly in an attempt to get away because she looks afraid. She is, however, apprehended and brutally strangled. At that moment, Kirk screams out Dr. Martin Steiner's name after spotting him amid the crowd. The latter, who seems to be living in hiding, makes an attempt to leave the area, but the two manage to catch up with him. They grill him for answers and he reluctantly decides to speak up. Martin takes them to his main lab and explains that when an explosion takes place, a dead person's echo is left behind. He provides them with an illustration by displaying the shadow of the dead left by the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. According to Dr. Martin, these echoes serve as a portal connecting the living to the deceased. Using this hypothesis, his team healed many patients who were close to passing away. But their major objective was to bring a completely dead person back to life. They required alive somebody who knew the precise date of the person they wished to reanimate in order to accomplish this. It was known as spectral transfusion procedure. Unfortunately, their experiment failed, and the disastrous explosion that followed claimed a great number of people. Dr. Martin then reveals that Brian was one of his assistants, who worked with him on the project. However, when Claire was killed, he changed. The doctor theorizes that Brian killed the other victims with the same birthday so that he could resurrect Claire through spectral transfusion. Meanwhile, Kirk steals a photograph from the lab so he can research it later. Dr. Martin then confirms that whatever the government is telling them is not true. The remnants can indeed alter the present, and they are a threat to the living. Hearing all this, Veronica wonders if Brian is trying to kill her, as she also shares the same February 29th birthday. She tries to ask for more information, but the doctor, who is riddled with guilt, abruptly commits the unthinkable. In the next scene, the duo returns to the school to investigate more, but as soon as they arrive, some officials apprehend Kirk. They have found a gun in his locker, In a state of desperation, Veronica walks up to Bittner and tells him everything. Fortunately, having spoken with Mary's mother once, he finds her credible this time. Then he discloses that, similar to today, Brian was expelled from his former school after it was found that his locker contained a gun. Veronica becomes wary of him after this and chooses to avoid him going forward. However, the issue remains unresolved. Veronica believes Brian is going to kill her because tomorrow is February 29th. Thankfully, Bittner has an answer. He proposes to create a secure space for her in her home. The lead lining that will enclose this space is supposed to keep the remnants out. Veronica quickly consents since she is aware that she is at a loss for options. When Anna arrives at the specified job site, she discovers that no one has contacted her. She was truly the victim of a nasty practical joke. When Kirk visits Veronica that evening and tries to chat to her, she appears aloof. Then, in a fit of rage, he admits that he had carried a gun to his former school not to hurt anyone, but to protect himself. But he doesn't know who put the gun in his locker yesterday. Veronica wants him to go since she still doesn't want to chat. There, the two work for hours and finally design the special room. Veronica is asked to spend the night there, until the danger is over. Meanwhile, Kirk researches the picture he took from the lab and makes a startling discovery. It turns out that Bittner was also one of the scientists in Dr. Martin's team. This makes Kirk realize that the man is up to something evil. He desperately tries to contact Veronica but fails because of no network in the room. With no options there, he rushes there to save her. As soon as Kirk arrives outside the house, he notices Bittner's daughter, Ava's remnant. This reveals that she is not a real human after all. Following this, the movie goes into a flashback where all the mysteries are unraveled. Bittner attempted, but was unable, to save Ava on that tragic day when she was also in the laboratory. He spent all day and night blaming himself for her death, which is how the notion of reanimating her via ghostly transfusion originated. He abducted other girls, including Claire, to accomplish this, but all of his attempts ended in failure. Upon learning of this, Brian attempted to alert Mary, but he too perished at the hands of Bittner. Following this, the villainous professor assumed a new identity and began working at this institution in order to obtain student records. When he finally discovered that Veronica is a February 29, he planned to use her for spectral transfusion. It turns out Bittner was the one who placed the gun in Kirk's locker and called Anna for an interview. Back to the present, as Kirk tries to contact the police, Bittner arrives from behind and knocks him out. He then buries the poor guy alive. After this, he returns to the special room where Veronica is staying. She is still unaware that the guy wants to kill her. However, when she gets a cut on her finger, she remembers that she had a vision of the same thing. She then puts two and two together and realizes that the visions were trying to warn her, which means that Bittner is a red flag. Scared, she tries to run away, but the evil guy catches up to her. He is about to finish her off, but just then, Veronica's dad appears, which distracts Bittner for a moment. Taking advantage of this opportunity, she hits him with one of her skates and runs outside. However, he once again catches up to her and tries to strangle her. When there's nowhere to go, Veronica breaks the ice beneath them, causing them both to plummet inside the freezing water. But even there, the evil guy continues to strangle her. He is about to kill her, but right then, Brian's remnant arrives and frees Veronica. Simultaneously, the remnant of Mary also appears and drags Bittner down, finally killing him. In the aftermath, Veronica reaches the surface, but she is too weak to rise up. Fortunately, Kirk arrives just in time and saves her. It is revealed that when he was under the ground, on the verge of death, his father's remnant showed up and dug him out.